Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm Jason Hine, and I'm here with Chantal Schweitzer. We're some of the team members from Early Information Science, and we're here to talk to you very briefly today about product content, product data, and the impact that it can have on user experience. We're trying to keep this to about 15 minutes. This is the About Us slide. But this presentation isn't really about us. If you really want to know, you can come back and look at the slides later. Our goal today is to make it very clear what the opportunity is for companies in this space, to not only build a business, but to really differentiate yourselves from competitors by using product data. It doesn't matter whether those competitors are across town or across the country. There is ways to generate more revenue, to take market share, and to capture that experience that right now might live only in your salespeople and put it into a system so that you can use it to attract new buyers that may or may not be interested in talking to your salespeople. So to give us a sense of where you are today, we have a little poll. Just hop in on the side there and just let us know, where in your digital transition are you? Are you just getting started? Do you have a plan in place and maybe it's misfiring? Are you ready to go and you're just looking for ways to optimize going forward? That'll help us just understand the audience we're talking to. So with all that out of the way, we're going to start with a very simple discussion of some of the fundamentals of product content. There's lots of things to a content strategy, but we're really just going to focus on two concepts. Right, Chantal? Why don't you walk us through those basics?
All right. So really the foundational step for content strategy is designing your taxonomy to categorize and organize your product data. And by taxonomy, I mean that category structure that really provides a clear, intuitive pathway to a specific the customer is looking for. And the ones that we see here are very simple. It's almost deceptive in its simplicity, but a lot of thought and strategy and best practice goes into building these things. And we would need an entire whole other session to dive into some of those principles.
Yeah, it's really the way that you think about it is if you're going to set up a brick and mortar store like a grocery store, you put a lot of thought into what foods do you put next to each other. Where do you put the milk? Where do you put the bakery goods? That same level of thought goes into product categories. It's about navigation and governance. The other component,
I love that analogy.
Product attributes, right? So once you find the right product, now you need to know, is this the right one?
Yeah, and by attributes, we're really talking about the specifications of that product. So
Exactly.
each category is going to have its own set of attributes that inherits down to its products that are classified to that specific category. And these are going to drive some key UX tools like the ones that we see here.
Yeah, these are really about, hey, I'm looking at two widgets. What are the difference between those widgets? That's the thing that customers are really looking for online. And if you can't present them with the information they need to understand that difference, then they're probably going to make decisions based on things like price or inventory status. And those usually aren't the main pick products. Now, when we talk about with our clients, the how to go through evaluating product content, what is good content, right? That's sort of the million-dollar question. And we look at it through the lens of, well, actually a set of 4 lenses. Content to be good has to be clear, it has to be complete, it has to be consistent, and it has to be correct. These are the 4 C's of product content. To be clear, it means it just has to be really simple. Don't use a lot of industry jargon. Use that. If you're approachable and simple, that helps you draw new customers. It has to be complete. If you don't have in your system all of the things that customers care about to make decisions, they're going to make bad decisions. The terminology should be consistent. You should use the same format, the same language whenever possible in order to facilitate comparison between and across product lines. And obviously, it has to be correct. If you're showing product that isn't correct, then we in B2B in particular run into issues of liability, and nobody wants to deal with that. So now that we've talked about what we're going to focus on and how we're going to define good versus bad, we're going to take a few minutes and walk through some examples of what Chantal and I have seen when we've worked with clients, both in terms of doing benchmarking as well as kind of coming in and doing discovery with a new client, and highlight some of the most common issues that we've seen back to product content. So
The
Chantal,
first thing I noticed,
there you go,
oh, sorry.
landing pages, right?
Yes.
Landing pages are obviously, this is where you go when you click on a product category or you're on a search results page, and now you have to try to get your customer to pick one of these options to buy it. There's a lot of decisions to be made here. There's a lot of things we could talk about. Chantal, what's your favorite?
The first thing I notice is the use of faceted search, which are the filters we see on the left nav, and I question the correctness. So we bring in that C for correct when using manufacturer and brand name as the top filters. Now, these are really important attributes, but I question if they're the ones the customer is going to use right off the bat to find the light bulb that they need. And the successful projects that I see really get honed in on understanding their customer, their journey, what impacts their navigation experience, including the attributes that drive selection and purchase.
Are you making decisions based on what customers want or what's convenient given the data you have? That's, I think, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and another one I see is.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Is consistency. Sorry, I'm always trying to take over the show. What can I say?
You're very passionate.
I can't help it. So the other thing I see is consistency. So we look at the inconsistency in the formatting when we see these attributes, the values in the filters. We see duplicate values, like the multiple Sylvanias. It's nasty. It's frustrating. It causes so much extra work.
Yeah, I got to go to 3 different options in order to pick all of the different Sylvania products that are available. Great points. Great points. And like I said, these are just a couple of examples. But in terms of once you actually get to a detail page, so this is sort of the next part. All right, we've gotten into the right part of the store. They've picked something up off the shelf. They're looking at it. They're trying to decide if this is the right one for them. How well does this page do that for you, Chantal?
So I'm going to stick with consistency on this one, because when we were looking at this particular product, if we went to another product in the same category, there was completely different sets of data and different templates, which makes product comparison a complete nightmare. And then we see duplicate sets of data. So that gets you with that clarity piece. With the wattages, do these wattages somehow mean something different or serve different purposes? It causes confusion. It makes you question the integrity of the data, things that you don't want to happen to your customer.
And it makes you question whether or not this company knows what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
This is like, do they know what this is? Why do they have wattage twice? They know it's not relevant. I pick up on the fact that they're not being terribly clear. So if you know a lot about light bulbs, you know what the dimensions are of a par 30 bulb, which is what this one is. So a lot of manufacturers won't necessarily give you more approachable dimensional attributes. What's the diameter of this bulb? What is the overall length of this bulb? But if I'm a non-expert and I'm sitting here, somebody brought one into my office and said, hey, I need to replace one of these, having those kind of plain English, doggy, piggy, bunny kinds of attributes can help those new customers feel confident about and therefore make a purchasing decision. So the issue is, Chantal, we see these issues all the time with clients. And we see, they are so common now that I think a lot of distributors actually think that this is acceptable. But this is the opportunity. And it got here because you have a lot of instances where distributors essentially treat content as a cost center which has to be minimized. I don't want to spend anything on my content, and the cheaper I can make it, the better off I'm going to be.
Yeah, I particularly see this when it comes to dedicating resources needed to focus on the governance and maintenance of product data. They'll ask people to steward the data on top of their already existing job, and then all of that important work gets put on the back burner, and that just doesn't help.
Yeah, there's an expression I heard recently that I really loved. It's, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And that's exactly,
very nice.
That's exactly what we see in these, in a lot of cases. Part of that, too, also draws into an over-reliance on syndicated content. There are a number of firms out there that essentially go out and gather data from manufacturer websites and offer it as a consolidated feed. It can be convenient, and it can be a part of a successful content strategy. But if the only thing that you're leaning on to differentiate yourself is the same content that everybody else has, you're going to find it much harder to differentiate, and you're going to be forced to compete based on things like price and inventory, which are, nobody's going to think that's that's a successful strategy long term.
Yeah, you're not owning your own story. And then if you don't have a centralized rule book, then you're going to have your data in many different silos. I've been on so many projects where that initial data gathering portion of the project, we find data strewn all over the place. Each product manager is managing their data for their particular product family independently. So the next product manager, who even has a like product, is going to have completely different formatted data and sometimes in completely different systems, like a spreadsheet versus a PDF. It's all over the place.
Right. It becomes the product manager's data, not the company's data. And that's a bad,
Yeah, exactly.
that can be bad going forward. So now let's take a quick look at a site, a company I used to work for, a company that does really prioritize treating its content as an asset. So here's a landing page from McMaster's Bulb site. What are the things that strike you compared to what we saw earlier?
I love the use of the illustrated value for bulb shape in addition to the bulb shape number. And this will really speak to someone who's not familiar with what that bulb shape number is. And it adds some variety to the experience. Honestly, if I could get this level of filtering to help me choose the right armor in my video games, like Skyrim, I would have a far less frustrating in-shop game experience.
Absolutely. I particularly pick up on, so we used to build these things when I was at McMaster called about boxes, and you see them up at the top of the page. And they're really meant to be just educational content. The last thing you want for customers to do on a landing page is to go somewhere else to get information. So they've actually created their own information to answer basic questions so that customers can get those answers without leaving the site.
Those are really nice.
Now when we get to the detail page, here you see it's not structurally very similar, it's structurally different from what we saw earlier, but they've taken some different approaches. Chantal, can you speak to what you've seen in looking at their experience?
The big thing I see here is completeness of data. You know you're making a good buying decision when you've seen a clean, efficient page like this. There's no confusion. It's displayed simply and clearly right in front of you.
And every single light bulb that they show has these same attributes in the same order, populated with the same types of values.Ey've taken consistency to the next level. They've also got some of those very approachable attributes that they've created. They have created an overall diameter, overall length. They even have an attribute here for equivalent incandescent watts. So they're recognizing that customers, in this case it's a halogen bulb, so it's going to be 60 watts, just like an incandescent. But they know that customers are going to compare LEDs and CFLs, which are much lower wattage, but they're looking to find something that will replace it, and they need something that has an equivalent light output. McMaster's actually created their own attribute in order to give that information. A really nice touch. So in terms of conclusions, we've got like 2.5 minutes left. Things that we want people to take away.
So I would say one of the big things is you need to establish that rule book. You need to have a good, strong taxonomy. And an advanced rule book will have multiple taxonomies that are going to serve different purposes in data management. And then you're going to need a strong set of schema. And those are going to lay out your category-specific attributes. So everything classified to that category has the same attributes that fit that particular category. And then very importantly is governance, which really sets all the rules in place to maintain the data processes, the user roles. And they sound like very big undertakings, and they can be, but you can't let that scare you. You've got to start simple.
And actually, it's one of those things that evolves over time, right? You are going to define good, like your standard for good in your rule book, in your taxonomy, in your attribution set, and you're going to say, based on what we know today, this is what we want to have. And then it's a matter of going out and saying, let's look at all of the product content that we have. How do we get it up to that minimum level of quality? But then, kind of going forward, instead of trying to boil the ocean and create perfect content on everything, you want to do it continuously. Take small bites, chew fast. And at the end, make sure that you're investing in technology to help you enforce that rule book going forward. And make a point of don't invest in technology first. That doesn't solve the problem. It only enforces it over time. So,
very true. You can have the best tool in the world, but if your data isn't clean, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't help you. So that's all we have for today. Thank you very much, and goodbye.